I think the Democratic Party is not quite left enough for my taste, but I'm Team America. Like, I don't have any illusions about who the good guys and who the bad guys in the world are. Unfortunately, over the last 10 years, I have been complicit in silence as this progressive movement has gotten more and more anti-Semitic, criticizing Israel. After October 7th, it hit a point where the cancer is terminal, and it has destroyed our movement to the core. Progressives today don't stand with our allies in Israel. They stand with Iran. They root for the terrorists, whether that's Hamas or the Houthis or Hezbollah. So it has really been a shock to me to see just how much this dark marriage between this Islamist political project and progressivism in the United States has had a marriage. So both sides get more power. It's been very disorienting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of The Western Spirit. Today, and I think it's our podcast is rightly named The Western Spirit because today we're going to talk about Western values and how important they are and what's happening. So today, like you already heard and see, we're talking with Brianna Wu. Brianna is a former congressional candidate from Massachusetts, and everybody knows her, or a lot of people know her from the GamerGate, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes,
That was it called?
Unfortunately.
And also, Brianna is the executive director of Rebellion PAC, which maybe I'll ask her about just what that is exactly soon. But
Sure.
Let's first talk about what's going on right now. Brianna, it's so good to see you.
It's a real honor to be here. I just want to start off by congratulating Israel on taking out some of America's worst enemies.
Yes.
I know America is wagging the finger at you instead of saying thank you. So just hear it from me. Thank you for taking out that terrible person that killed, 241
Marines
of our
in the
Marines
80s.
in 1983. Thank you so much. America sends our thanks for that. We appreciate it.
And you also killed a lot of French citizens, and obviously a lot of Israelis. And I was here in 2006 in the second Lebanese war, and I remember that we did not have the Iron Dome that we have now then.
That's right.
And it was so scary. And Haifa, which is the third biggest city of Israel, was basically totally evacuated, hundreds of thousands of people outside of their homes. So this guy deserved everything he got. And
That's right.
and I think that maybe we'll start off like this. I've been seeing a lot of your tweets since October 7th. I reached out to you, because I think it's refreshing to see people, because what happened was after October 7th, I was here. My dad was visiting from New York, and we brought him to the holidays, which it was a holiday. It was the Simchat Torah holiday here. And then what happened? Everybody knows what happened. And the next day, you pick up your phone, you're scrolling, and you see next to where I grew up in New York in Times Square, protest the next day supporting people and groups who raped women, who slaughtered children, who kidnapped people. So I guess my question is, what is behind this? Like, obviously the Islamists, we all know, but it seems that there's another big group of people, especially in the West, in America, where you're from, that they call themselves progressives.
That's right.
So
I think people should know. I think most people in Israel probably know. Left versus right politics. You've got the right is the Republicans, and then the left you've got the Democrats. There's a kind of inter-party battle going on right now, which is between the normie Democrats and who are the progressives. And, historically, I'm one of the key figures associated with progressivism. For GamerGate, which was a scandal a decade ago, women in the video game industry were being asked to be treated a little more fairly. The video game industry has a lot of sexism in it, and we were getting rape threats, death threats, doxed, just a lot of really serious online abuse for just asking for more women to be hired in our industry. And for that, the FBI got involved. It was a whole thing. So if you were like writing a list of who are like 10 progressive women, kind of wanting to push the Democratic Party to the left, I would probably be on that list.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty well known. What has happened, unfortunately, is over the last 10 years, there has been this increasing alliance between progressives, a movement I got into because I like things like healthcare and women's rights, with the Islamist project to destroy the West. Now look, I think the Democratic Party is not quite left enough for my taste, but I'm Team America. Like, I don't have any illusions about who the good guys and who the bad guys in the world are. Unfortunately, over the last 10 years, I have been complicit in silence as this progressive movement has gotten more and more anti-Semitic, criticizing Israel. After October 7th, it hit a point where the cancer is terminal and it has destroyed our movement to the core. Progressives today don't stand with our allies in Israel. They stand with Iran. They don't root for, the people that tried to genocide you on October 7th to face justice. They root for the terrorists, whether that's Hamas or the Houthis or Hezbollah. So it has really been a shock to me to see just how much this dark marriage between this Islamist political project and progressivism in the United States has had a marriage. So both sides get more power. It's been very disorienting.
And, you've had time, I guess, now to process this, and you're processing a lot of it. I'm reading the way you're talking about and writing about it. It's like a crazy. One of the things that I think maybe you can answer or try to answer to us is, how could it be that people who are so progressive in the sense that, like you said, for more healthcare for women, more healthcare for trans people, more freedom for minorities, they look at the Middle East and they see, objectively, Israel with all its flaws, and there's a lot of flaws here that I myself write about internally and criticize. I did not vote for the current government, etc., etc. Every country has their own flaws and own problems internally, but objectively, a country where there is a gay pride parade in every city, including Jerusalem, a country where gay people have not all the rights that they would like, but extremely more rights than our neighbors here. And women and obviously trans people and every other aspect of what progressives hold dear, Israel would be more positive on that front. And then a war happens like this, and you see people who call themselves progressive standing with Hamas flags and Houthi flags, which their slogan is "Death to America." Their actual slogan, "Death to the Jews, Death to America," or something to that effect.
I saw a flag the other day. It was the Iranian flag and then the trans flag underneath it. And I'm like,
exactly. So how do you, is there any explanation to what are they thinking?
Do you want the real answer or do you want the political answer? The real answer is Jews are white-coated. You were seen as the oppressors because of a brain-dead analysis of structural power, and a bunch of children are think they are reliving the 1964 civil rights movement here in the United States, and Jews have lighter skin color than Arabs do, and that's the thinking there. Black equals good, white equals bad.
It's everything about
the truth of the matter.
It's all skin color. Everything is
skin color. And the fact that we've been ideologically infiltrated by some people. The longer answer is there's a concerted, information war that is being, waged against Americans. The right wing has fallen for this big time with Ukraine, as Putin and their allies have convinced the right that Ukraine is not a battle worth fighting. And, unfortunately, Qatar and China and Russia have targeted the useful idiots of the progressive movement and are telling them a bunch of lies about what Islam wants, and are convincing them you are the villains and the Islamists are the good guys.
Yeah.
And these idiots are falling for it.
So just one of the things that I've spoken a lot with different people of academic backgrounds who study the progressive movement a lot in the past few years, because even before October 7th, it was something that interested me because I think my dad's district is very close to AOC's. So on the one hand, you'll have Richie Torres, who's a gay black Democrat who supports Israel and was in the progressive caucus. And he was thrown out not too long ago because he supported Israel from the progressive caucus. And on the other hand, you have people like AOC who are the young guns of the Democrat Party. So should we be, I mean, you said the normies, but is maybe the new normal, because the young generation of Democrats, it seems to me, and we also see this in polls, are way to the left of the normies.
It's not just that they're to the left. They're explicitly anti-Semitic. I can show you poll after poll after poll. I don't have a better way to say it. Jews don't kill to them. This is a political project that is it's a side that should be going off. You know, one of the things that I've done this year is, before I started commenting on this, I made really sure to read a whole bunch of the history of Israel. And, you know, if you look at Golda Meir and the work, getting, the United States to recognize Israel in 1948, that didn't happen serendipitously. Y'all had an effort to talk to Americans in back channel, have us understand your struggle. And then when you won that war, we were ready to stand by you and recognize you as a country. You had a project to educate us. And I say this with deep respect because I love Israel. You can see it every day. But y'all have, unfortunately, you've told yourself that you have to go it alone with everything, and you've stopped reaching out to Americans to help us understand your missions. I'm in my 40s. I got that education in the 80s and the 90s. This generation is not. Y'all have failed, and we have failed to make that case. So what I need are good people out there that can help me tell a story to this younger generation of people about who you are and what you stand for. Because they're telling a story about you. It's bloodthirsty Jews committing a genocide. And people believe that. And it's a lie. And if these lies sit there and fester, that is going to become the reality. So this is an emergency.
Yes, I agree. And we also, like you said, see it in the polls over and over and over that the younger you are, especially on the Democrat side, and most young people in America are on the Democrat side, you are way more, like you said, you said it more than I, anti-Semitic or anti-Israeli, whatever you want to say. Yeah. So maybe just ask you about what's happening now in the Democrat National Convention. The president, the current president, we a lot of times tend to forget that he's still president.
He's kind of not on TV that much, so it's understandable.
He's on the beach. But my point is that he gave a speech at the DNC, this big convention. I mean, they moved him to like 12 o'clock at night, but let's not talk about that. I just want to say about his specific speech. At one point of the speech, he said, the protesters outside have a point.
Yeah.
And my question is, why did he feel, obviously he's talking in a sense that he feels that it's important for him to say this to his home base.
Yeah.
And why does he feel it's important? What is the point that people in the Democrat Party that are sitting there in the convention hall think that the people outside have a point about?
I think that there is, in the Democratic Party, I think we learned all the wrong lessons from 9/11 and Bush's war on terror. Now look, I want to be really clear with you. The Iraq war was a mistake, and Afghanistan was badly mismanaged. I am of the opinion the Iraq war and Bush's decision to invade is the direct reason that Hamas ended up taking over Gaza. And I think America is actually to blame for this if you really want to get direct. You know, we removed a buffer state and let Iran have so much influence through the entire region. So I want to be super clear and beyond against that policy. But the lesson America should have learned from that mistaken war was it really, really, really matters who we elect and what our policy in the Middle East is. It really matters because ISIS gets built if we make the wrong call. You know, Hamas gets put in power if we make the wrong call. Instead, we took this lesson. America equals bad.
Yes.
You know, don't ever be Islamophobic. You know, be very careful. And we've put our fingers in our ears. And I say this to you in all sincerity. Look, if you are someone who is Muslim in the United States, I have no issue with you. Our country is built on freedom of religion. I respect you. You're my neighbor. I have tons of very good friends. But there is a threat of theocratic Islam that is very real, that Israel deals with every day. And because of, the decision to invade Iraq, America has never had an honest discussion about it. This is a huge blindness that we have. And I think, again, until we can tell people a story and help them understand this destabilizing threat through the Middle East, I think we're going to just be oblivious to this force that is destroying democracy.
Yes, I agree 100%. Also about Iraq, Afghanistan patently was being like a disaster, even if you supported it. But I wanted to ask about, generally speaking, what it means today to be a progressive, because it seems that first of all, the label is very weird. Like nobody knows already what it means. But also you wrote something about transgenderism, which I thought was interesting, which you said that you're fearful that because for one of the things that you wrote today, I think, was about the pronouns, which have become this big ideological issue. Another thing that you wrote about, tweet, hold on, my eyesight isn't that great, but you wrote that about the pregnant people, or women are pregnant, all that.
It's stupid, right?
Yeah,
it's really
so maybe,
dumb. Yeah.
Yes, but it's become ideological. That's what I think you were saying, like how stupid it is, but it's also people could lose their jobs over these types of things, and it's become makes people so angry and so full of rage. What are all these things coming from?
So, oh boy, we're getting into trans politics.
No, not trans politics. My point is, before you continue, is that if you would have come to me 10 years ago and said, I'm a progressive, I support Israel, but I'm against occupation. I support trans rights, but obviously, the pronouns, everybody should call those whatever they want. It's not a big deal. I'm for gay marriage. I'm for, putting people in jail, whatever. We don't need to abolish the police, but we need to have maybe prison reform. Today, it's like, that's a conservative sometimes.
That's correct.
So maybe give us a little bit behind the scenes about what
the problem with progressivism is there's no mechanism to hit the brakes on bad ideas.
Exactly.
So you have a policy that's really smart. You had, the Black Lives Matter. Eric Gardner was killed by police in a really brutal killing, right? I can't breathe, knee on the neck, really difficult. We needed to have a discussion in America about our policing practices. That is the reasonable discussion to have. The problem is progressivism gets involved with this, and the ideas just get stupider and stupider and stupider. So then it's like, well, we should have police reform. It becomes, do police really need to carry guns? Do we really need to throw people in jail? And then the ultimate example of a stupid idea, defund the police, which is just, is just the dumbest idea in human history. It's just, there's a slur I want to use, so I'm not going to. And, trans politics are very much the same. I think, it's not a surprise to most people that there are some effeminate young boys that want to grow up and just live as women, right?
Yeah.
That's not a shock to people. And we have medical ways to help them today. What this has morphed into the progressive movement is people deciding they are dear gender or alien gender, or feeling very insulted when you have breast implants and a full beard and people call you he. It's just silliness. And the problem is with progressivism, if there's ever a point where you go, hold on, I don't think this makes sense, they kick you out of the movement. So, this is what's happened to me for standing up for Israel. October 7th was the moment I said, enough. I can go along with some of this stuff for a greater good, but if we're going to pretend that the rapists are the victims and not the Jews, I'm out, y'all. This is insane. This is evil. And the problem is there's just no way to push back on this. The progressive movement needs to die. so we can move forward and build something sane again.
I want to ask you something that I heard not so long ago, and I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Sure.
That's one of the things is that today still most people are the normies. So even if they won't speak out, they're still normies. They still believe what we spoke about until now. And one of the things that it seems to me is that they don't speak out.
Yeah.
And when you ask people why you don't speak out, most of them feel uncomfortable.
That's right.
You know, the people who make the most noise are the people who we hear the most. And if there's no one that will make noise back to them, you'll only hear them. And a lot of people are scared to speak out. They're scared to talk. They're scared because in the polls, 80% of Americans still support Israel. And yet when you walk down, when I was last week in New York, you'll see, I walked down next to Columbia University, I saw hundreds of students screaming anti-Jewish slurs outside one of the Jewish sororities or the Hillel, or I'm not exactly sure. My point is that they're the ones that you're seeing screaming. And the reason is that people feel uncomfortable. People feel, do you feel that's true? Like people, it's not comfortable. Why should I get into it?
I think, gosh, I hope this isn't offensive to say, but it's just the truth that I think. Y'all get attacked so often. It's happened through my entire life. Like I barely remember, Yasser Arafat and the peace process falling apart. I remember reading stories about Israel dealing with terrorist attacks. And I'm ashamed to tell you, my thought process was, here we go again. And at a certain point, Americans just tune all this stuff out. And, I think we can tell the stakes are so high on this that a lot of people have been bullied into being silent. I mean, why wouldn't you? When you've got one side confidently and wrongly saying it's a genocide, turning the victims of the Holocaust into the perpetrators of it, it's kind of scary to voice an opinion. So I think what a lot of Jews are interpreting as animosity is ignorance.
Yes.
Because y'all do have a very complicated history. One of the reasons I think I'm good at my job advocating for Israel is I have no illusions. I don't want to go through every single war y'all have had since 1948. This is a simple story. The British were really crappy at managing the aftermath of World War II. 2 people wanted to land. 6 Arab countries came together to try to slaughter y'all. You won. You pushed them out because they were trying to kill you. And then egos got in the way, and they've been trying to kill you for 78 years. That is the truth of the situation. Until you can start talking to people in just plain terms that they can understand, I think they're just going to go, oh, I don't know about this. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it makes sense. And one other thing that I think also makes sense is that it seems to me that the progressive movement, or whatever you want to call it, has developed a almost sort of fascination, a fanaticism towards victim mentality.
Yes.
So the more you're a victim, the better you are, the more moral you are, and the more righteous you are. So the Palestinians are very much into that category because they're victims. They lost in the sense that they've lost every war. They're much more poorer than Israelis. They live in disgusting areas in Gaza and in the West Bank. And almost all of that, obviously Israel's policy can be criticized, but almost all of that is due to their own leaders making
100%.
very bad decisions. They've got tons of money from the West, and it was all going to either fight Israel or to their own pockets. And Yasser Arafat's wife, for example, you mentioned him, lived in Paris. I think she still does. And she got tons of money from Yasser, who got the money from the West. My point is that there's sort of in the Torah, I don't like using it, but in the Torah, there's a thing that says the poor person isn't always in the right.
That's right.
I think the Talmud says that. So my point is that sometimes people who are very successful are the ones that are the moral ones. It doesn't mean that you're good or bad if you're not successful as the other person on this other side of you. Why is there such an obsession with victimhood?
Because the progressive movement has inverted the hierarchy of power, right? Now, there is a real conversation to be had about, like what we were talking about at the beginning, the video game industry and structural bias in that video game industry against women. That's real. And I can show it to you in study after study. It's just women are not treated fairly in this industry and don't get treated by the quality of their ideas. It is very much a boys' club. But the solution of what we do to that matters. And the progressive solution is to invert the hierarchy of oppression and then make it so the bigger victim you are, the higher up the top of that you are. So white men are at the bottom. We know that. Straight women very much at the bottom. Then, black people, maybe, people being Muslims. And then at the very top, you got like a person of color that's a transgender woman who's also disabled, right?
Yeah.
This is a formula for insanity. What I was talking to Elon Levy about just a couple of days ago is something I find really inspirational about Israel. Something I really identify with, y'all, is Israel is a miracle. Like, you are living in the toughest neighborhood in the entire world.
Yes.
No one is giving you anything. You took these useless plots of land, you put kibbutzes on top of it, you turned it into perfect farmland and deeply enviable land to have. You weren't victims. Everyone was trying to kill you, and you stood up, and you have one of the most badass militaries in the world, and you make every young person serve there. If that's not a miracle of someone with every single odd stacked against them, standing up for themselves and making a good life for themselves, I don't know what is. So I wish progressives would look at Israel and go, this could be us. If we band together and we're realistic about the stuff that we've got to fight in this country as trans people or black people or women, we can build a paradise. But it's our decisions that we make. That's the difference. And that's the difference what the Jews have done and what the Palestinians have done.
Also, do you think that Jewish Americans, because they're so successful financially and culturally, that they can never reach the victim status by the other groups in the hierarchy? So because even though, like, if I remember correctly, FBI statistics, Jews are the biggest religious group in terms of hate crimes and violence done against them, specifically because they are Jews, more than blacks in America, and they're much smaller percentage-wise than any other group on that list. And yet they're still considered part of the white structure, like you said.
That's right.
Is it because they're so successful at the same time that they're a minority?
I think to a point. I think it's really careful. Like, not every Jew is a millionaire or a CEO of a country. There are plenty of working class Jews. I ran for Congress. I can tell that to you, firsthand. But, I think there's definitely a perception. This anti-Semitic narrative that Jews control everything has definitely taken hold. The reality is Jews in this country have tightly knit communities where you know each other, you look out for one another.
Right.
And I think a lot of people would be really smart to look at that behavior and think about it more critically.
I wanted to ask you something about America. So we're talking about basically America's view on Israel and progressives and all that. But I guess just in general, also someone who knows about video games. So maybe this is a good question for you. I saw not too long ago a poll that said something like a third of young people in America have no friends.
Yeah.
And I see that church attendance is way down in America the past decade. And not for a religious reason, I'm asking, just because people have no community, it seems to me.
That's right.
People are more, I'm a very individualistic person, but I think we should recognize that people need friends. They need a support system and people who can say good things to them when they need a helping hand and can help them when they need a little bit of, money. Even, people need some sort of people around them that love them and care for them. And a lot of Americans don't have that. And also in terms of, partners for life, Americans are getting less married. They're not, a lot of young men haven't had sex into their late 20s in America. So it seems to me that when we look at the protests on campuses, people are going to campus a lot of times without any purpose in life, with no friends, with no support system around them. And they meet these groups whether it's the Islamist groups or the progressive like crazies, and they give them a sense of purpose that they would never get anywhere else. And so I think, do you think that, first of all, do you think that's true for a lot of these kids? And secondly, does that not reflect so badly on where American, young people are now?
No, it's 100% true. And I've thought so much about this. If you go back to the GamerGate scandal, one of the reasons this caught on so like wildfire with younger men is GamerGate gave them a home. It gave them male leaders. Just for whatever reason, men in this country are failing to launch and make friendships, and they're failing to become men. They're ending up as boys forever, which is very tragic. Look, I'm a famous feminist. I am very sympathetic to this. I am not the person to teach young men to get hands. I'm not going to be helpful.
But also young women.
Sure. But but I'm saying there needs to be a project here in this country. We need balanced men, adult men, to step up and shepherd some of these lost boys. One of the things I really respect about Israel is your universal service in your military. I think this is a really, really good idea. I think like a period of serving your country where you learn skills and you have to work with other people, even if they have different ideas than you. I think this is a really good thing. It's clear to me America needs some sort of national project where, I believe in individuality, but I also believe in this country. And I think we've really lost our sense of shared sacrifice and responsibility to one another in this country. And just one more thing on that. One of the real glories of being so vocal about supporting Israel after October 7th is it has been a lovely opportunity to talk to my friends on the right again and understand we actually share a lot of values. We don't agree on trans policy or abortion or what the top marginal tax rate should be, but we love this country. We believe in our national security, and we understand America has enemies. And I think, like, if America can learn the right lessons from October 7th, it should be Republicans and Democrats need to come together and take this threat very seriously and start talking to one another again.
Yes. Also here, I think when I was I went for a week in New York. It's something interesting that you just said. I went for a week in New York, and the fact that you have people who never met a single Republican in their life is something that is, I think, emblematic of where we are today. You go sometimes to Tel Aviv, they never spoke to anyone that lives in Jerusalem and tends to be more religious or right wing or vice versa. So I think that it's just very, very sad also because you can never get things done that way. And maybe just one last question. You were on policy in America. You were a congressional candidate. You are, I guess, in Democrat Party circles, so to speak. Let's say Kamala Harris does become the next president. We don't know, obviously, the election hasn't been won. But if she becomes the next president, should we be worried about, I'm talking just as an Israeli here, internal American politics. I have my opinions, but I don't live there. It's your problem either way. But should we be worried about just her support? Because it seems that the people around her, some of them are, she went to meet the leaders of the people, the uncommitted votes in Michigan. She met with the mayor of Dearborn, which was called, I think, by the Wall Street Journal, the jihad capital of America. She has a lot of very interesting characters on that front where her team is meeting with them because they need their votes. Question is, will that carry into the White House?
I would love to tell you no. The answer is yes. You should be worried. Kamala Harris, I will vote for her. I've worked very hard to raise money for her. I've canvassed for her. I will thumb beg for her, and I will encourage everyone I know to go vote for her enthusiastically. I personally believe Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy, as evidenced by January 6th. At the same time, Kamala Harris is my honest impression as an instinctual needs to both sides this situation. And she tries to please everyone and just will not say very simple things. The truth is, like this last week, Israel did the world a favor by taking some filthy, awful terrorists off the map. We owe you for that. And we don't need to hedge it or both sides it. We just need to understand there's some evil people and you got to deal with them.
Yes.
For whatever reason, I don't think Kamala is willing to take that moral stance, and it concerns me. What I would say, though, in her defense is you're not just electing her, you're electing the entire national security apparatus around that. I think Anthony Blinken has been an outstanding Secretary of State for this country. And I think when you look at the chaos of Trump and Rex Tillerson, which was his first Secretary of State, I don't think Trump is very good at foreign policy. I think dismantling NATO would be disastrous for Israel. So I'm holding my nose and voting for her, no matter, even despite this, believing that in the longer term, it's going to be better for Israel. And I'm 100% committed to sounding the alarm at the top of my lungs in this party that after Election Day, we've got to have a reckoning. We've got to get rid of the anti-Semites in our party, and we need to rebuild our trust with American Jews, which we have broken. Every poll shows we've broken. We are hemorrhaging support. This is a crisis for our party. If we do not rebuild this bridge, we are going to lose a significant portion of Jews for one generation, probably two.
Brianna, on a personal level, since you started speaking out like this, have you, a lot of people that I've talked to have spoken about losing friends, getting
Yes.
death threats,
Yes.
Getting like vile, disgusting, racist, homophobic, whatever threats. Have you suffered those kinds suffered? I don't like the word suffered. Have you experienced those types of things just to show, how
There's been a
maybe,
very high cost, yes.
Yes.
Not just lost contracts, lost friends, lost media appearances. I've had people sit outside of my house and email me pictures of my front door just to let them know they know where I live. I get, my email is basically Protocols of the Elders of Zion newsletter. I get so many anti-Semitic comments. And look, I have the privilege. I can laugh it off when someone says my nose is big or calls me a Jew. I think this is funny. But at the end of the day, I do seriously worry about one of these nut jobs murdering me. We did have Islamic extremists committed a major terror incident with the Boston Marathon bombing. And I worry about that happening to me. So the thing is, though, like, you have to speak up here. And this is personal to me. I am not willing to have a Democratic Party that is explicitly anti-Semitic, which is the path that we're on.
Yeah.
And trying to save our party. And, this is your chance. If you've ever wondered what you would have done during World War II, or wondered what you would have done during the 1964 Civil Rights Movement, this is your chance. This is a crisis for Jews, not just in America, but around the world. And you got to pick a side. Are you
Brianna,
on the side
you're
of
not
the
Jewish,
rapists?
right? I just want
Nope.
to put it out there.
I'm not.
So they're being anti-Semitic against you. They're
Yes,
just
it's hilarious.
through you bringing
I
out
don't
their
think I look
hatred.
Jewish. This is very
I don't know.
funny to me. Yes.
I don't know what Jews look like, but well, I don't know. I can't see, like we spoke before, I can't see your nose. So we'll talk about that later. But let me just, on the flip side, you mentioned this before, you've spoken with people you probably would not have spoken to if October 7th wouldn't have happened. So maybe just for making us feel a little bit hopeful, tell us about people you've spoken to that you probably would never have seen or obviously spoken a word to in the past.
So this is maybe an overshare, but when I came out 20 years ago, my family disowned me immediately. This was very hard for me because I was adopted.
You came out as trans, right?
Yeah, as a trans woman. And this was very hard because I lost two families.
Wow.
But one of the really beautiful things since October 7th is I've made so many older Jewish mom friends who constantly text me and ask incredibly inappropriate personal questions about my life. And I find it, maybe if you grew up with it, it's grating, but for me, it's very hard. So I'm very thankful for those friendships that I've made. Yeah, I'm honored. I get invited out to, Shabbat dinner very regularly on Friday now. And, it's, yeah, I don't want to overstep because it's not my community, but I'm always just, I am thankful to have made friends and to be around people that really act with one purpose, which is, to look out for one another. I find that really touching.
And also, about that is that one of the things that I think a lot of people are very jealous of the Jewish community is not specifically any, character traits that are inherent, but the fact that they have community. That's and right. They're all together, and there's a sort of like looking out for another. So when I was walking in New York with the kippah, people were saying hi to me. I don't know anyone from there, but there's something nice about it. On the other hand, people who don't like me probably would curse me out, but it goes both ways. So I think that's one of the reasons why they would curse me out, is that there's a sense of belonging. That's and right. A lot of people don't have that anymore. So like we said before, people in the West, it needs to be spoken about a lot. The loneliness, the sense of floating out there throughout life without any purpose. So, hey, let me just ask you one last thing before you go. When are you coming to Israel for Shabbat dinner here?
Someone needs to, so this is what I want to do. I'm pretty famous in our country. And what I want is for someone in Israel for your media office to reach out to me. I will pay to fly over there and just hook me up where I can talk to some of your elected officials. Yeah, I can do some shoots and I can produce some media to tell some stories to younger American voters about who Israelis are and what the truth is over there. Honestly, I can't book this myself, so I'm just waiting for someone to hear this interview and go, you know what? This Brianna Wu, I like that woman.
Brianna will talk to you after we finish recording, and I will get it done. So,
amazing.
Or at least I'll try. So
do I get to Shabbat dinner at your house?
Yes.
My amazing.
Well,
amazing.
Let me just finish by saying that you spoke about the whiteness of Jews, or at least their perceived whiteness. It's very weird because most of American Jews are Ashkenazic, but when you come to Israel, most of the Jews here are not European descent. So, for example, my wife is half Iraqi and half Persian. So her father came from Baghdad and her mother came from Isfahan in Iran. And her brother is married to an Ethiopian Jew. So he's black. In America, his wife would be perceived as African American, even though she is an African and American. But all her family and her brothers are in the IDF, and her brother was in October 7th at one of the kibbutzim. Crazy story how he survived. But my point is that most Israelis aren't even white adjacent. They're black or people of color would be like.
Are you suggesting that facts should drive any of this narrative? Because as well as I do, like reality is not going to stop anti-Semitism. So.
No, but I have a friend, just as a funny thing, I have a friend who's an Arab and he was in the army. And every time he goes to one of these events, these protests, he takes pictures of himself, and they find it very confusing that someone who's an Arab can be supportive of Israel or say nice things about Jews and all that kind of stuff. It's a very confusing situation. But let me just say that our listeners and viewers could just know that we're going to try to help Brianna and us to get this done. It will be very, very interesting and nice to see. So we'll talk about that after we end the recording. And I want to thank you for being with us, Brianna. It was a pleasure.
It's more of a pleasure for me, very genuinely. I'm very proud to stand with Israel, and I'm proud to get to know you. And I think, every time I leave a conversation like this, I leave really feeling morally recharged and like I'm on the right path. And, it's a real honor to be your friend.
That's so nice. And I now consider you a personal friend. So it's not just.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for our listeners and our viewers. And obviously, we're going to, in Hebrew, try to put this up. It'll be in the newspaper also. So feel free to contact me, obviously, also in Hebrew or in English, WhatsApp, mail, whatever, with suggestions, questions for Brianna. and we'll forward them and hear back from her. So thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you on the next episode.